Beauty, who was also known as Yuji, had a tough childhood. His dad bullied him for not being talented, and he always felt overshadowed by his gifted sister Kazuki. Kazuki was a brilliant artist whose skills earned the family a lot of money. After a tragic event, Yuji was left an orphan and trained by bad people to become an emotionless elite soldier. His life was a hard one to endure. His family, especially his dad, ignored him because he didn't have the same talent as Kazuki. She won art awards and sold her work for millions. Yuji avoided being around her because people would make fun of him. However, Kazuki tried to help fill the emptiness he felt. She was the only one who would play with him and even taught him how to throw balls. Kazuki was Yuji's only source of happiness and motivation. She supported him unconditionally and encouraged him to chase his dreams, telling him he had great potential. Even when Yuji made bad drawings, she kept them to lift his spirits. However, their father continued to mock Yuji to the point where he ripped up his own drawings out of shame. One day, a strange man came to their home offering Yuji a mysterious box of chocolate. Though his father labeled Yuji a failure, the stranger just grinned. As years passed, Kazuki decided to hide her talent. She stopped going to art school in Paris and spent her time reading comic books with Yuji. She told him that he should focus on making friends instead of being lonely. Her paintings still provided income for the family, but they treated Yuji even worse. They would dine out, leaving him only old, hard bread. He had to soak it in water to eat. When Kazuki saw this, she got angry and yelled at him to eat other food from the fridge. Kazuki was afraid that Yuji would become like their dad, so she encouraged him to make friends and not stay lonely. The income from her sporadic paintings became the family's main income source. Despite this, they kept treating Yuji poorly, going out to eat without him and leaving him only stale bread. He had to soak the bread in water to make it edible. When Kazuki saw this, she yelled at him to take food from the fridge. Yuji always felt left out in his family, and his sister Kazuki knew it. One day he told her he didn't eat food from the fridge because their parents would get mad. Kazuki was upset. She had tried to talk to their parents about treating Yuji better, but nothing changed. Their dad still disliked Yuji, and their mom started to ignore him to avoid making their dad angrier. Yuji once came home late and told Kazuki he was with a friend who was a girl. Kazuki got concerned. She was trying to make sure his friends were good for him and wasn't happy that he was always making friends with girls. Jealous, she told Yuji he needed her permission to be friends with girls. He agreed, and Kazuki felt she could help him find the right friend one day. Later, she even shared a special sibling moment, telling him her love for him was real. As time passed, Kazuki went to a regular high school and joined the basketball team to hide her talents. She manipulated her friends and even their parents, which scared Yuji, but he felt he had no other option but to rely on her. Then tragedy struck. A bus crashed, leaving only one survivor, a girl with red hair. This sent their dad into a depression, and he began drinking. He got angrier each day, and their mom had to hide Yuji whenever their dad was around. All Yuji remembered was his dad yelling and his mom just saying sorry. Eventually, Yuji and his mom ran away to a new home. They were poor, but they felt happy and safe for the first time. Yuji loved his mom's cooking and felt like he was in a little piece of heaven. But this peace was short-lived. A year later, their dad found them. He told Yuji's mom that she needed to give him another golden egg like Kazuki had been. When Yuji tried to intervene, his dad pushed him. In that moment, Yuji knew he had to do something drastic. He looked at his dad and decided it was time to end this misery once and for all. He remembered a question Kazuki had asked him before. Which hand would he use to end a person's life? Filled with resolve, he comforted his mom and prepared for the tough choice he had to make next. Yuji's mother nervously handed him a bundle of cash, her life savings. "Run to the train station," she urged. "I'll join you later." Trusting her, Yuji ran as fast as he could. But as he waited, he heard the haunting sound of ambulance sirens in the distance. A feeling of dread settled over him. He returned home to find his father injured and his mother gone, never to speak to her again. He fainted from the shock and woke up in a hospital, a farewell note from his mother on the bedside table. She asked for his forgiveness and pondered where she went wrong. Left alone, Yuji was taken in by a mysterious man named Ray. Although Ray treated him more like a sister than a son, Yuji didn't complain. He finally had food to eat and a bed to sleep in. But one night, things took a darker turn when Ray's bodyguard tried to harm him. Yuji defended himself successfully. Ray, surprised, praised him and decided he should become a strong tool. Yuji was then sent to a military compound for rigorous training. As the days passed, he became a tough, emotionless soldier. Despite becoming Ray's favorite student, the other recruits bullied him constantly. The only exception was a kind girl named Marlene, who couldn't remember her own past. She shared her food with him and was his sole comfort. At the compound, Ray started going by the name Oslo. He trained Yuji using real knives and taught him to trust no one. In this world, everyone is your enemy, even your own family, Oslo would say. He conditioned Yuji to think that only he could be trusted, effectively brainwashing him. Finally, the day of the final test arrived. Yuji's task was to kill the person standing before him. When he saw that it was Marlene, his heart sank. The test was the ultimate battle between his emotional ties and his harsh training. For years, Yuji had gone through life's cruel challenges. First, the loss of a family where his mother was the only sanctuary. Then Ray/Oslo, who turned his vulnerability into a weapon but made him lose his sense of self. Now he faced the prospect of losing Marlene, the only person who showed him kindness in a world that seemed so dark and unfeeling. As he prepared to confront Marlene, his past flashed before him. His mother's tearful eyes as she told him to run, the sadness in Marlene's face as she shared her last piece of bread with him, and Oslo's eyes that looked at him not as a human being, but as a tool to be used. With everyone who had ever mattered to him weighing on his mind, Yuji had to make a choice. It was the moment that would define the rest of his life, forcing him to decide what kind of man he would become. Would he become the soulless weapon that Oslo wanted him to be, or would he reclaim his humanity, starting with a life or death decision he had to make about Marlene? The air was thick with tension as he readied himself for what came next. Yuji charged at Marlene, knocking her down with his fists. His training had made him agile and strong, but as he moved to deliver another kick, memories of his father hurting his mother flooded his mind. His focus broke. Seizing the moment, Marlene knocked him down and stood over him. Soon, Yuji had lost the fight, disappointing his harsh mentor, Oslo. In jail, Marlene came to treat Yuji's wounds. She was crying and said she was sorry for hurting him. She continued to be the only person who talked to him. On the day of her graduation, she said goodbye, promising to see him again. But that was the last time he saw her. Later, a nurse told him Marlene had died on her first job. Yuji wondered if being tougher in their fight could have saved her. After graduation, Yuji became an assassin. He was successful until law enforcement stormed Oslo's home. They found a secret passage and a steel door. Behind the door was a white-haired child, Yuji. His hair fell off as they discovered him. Asako, one of the officers, thought he was interesting and decided to take him to Japan. Another officer, Jibi, went with her to keep an eye on them. In the hospital, Asako told Yuji to get out of bed within 40 seconds and hit him when he didn't move fast enough. Jibi yelled at Asako to be gentler, but Yuji didn't understand kindness. He had never experienced it, so Asako kept treating him harshly, even saying she would be his god from now on. When they got to her home, she told him to change his clothes. They were shocked to see his body covered in scars. His life had been a cycle of violence and hurt, starting with his family, then in Oslo, and now even in his supposed rescue. Each scar told a story of a life that had been hard from the beginning. It seemed like there was no escape from the cycle for Yuji. Now, under Asako's watch, he had to decide what to do next. Should he trust this new authority figure who was far from kind but had saved him? His life had been a series of tests, betrayals, and letdowns. He was torn between hope and despair, between wanting to believe in people and fearing another disappointment. So far, life had taught him that trust was a weakness. But deep down, he yearned for something different, for a chance to break the cycle and start anew. When they finally sat down for dinner, Yuji didn't touch his food. Instead, he crushed a fly that buzzed by. This small act triggered something inside him. He screamed in terror and threw up. Sako wasn't gentle, but came to comfort him, telling him not to make a mess in her house. That night, while bathing him, she saw the extent of his scars, gunshot wounds, knife marks, and signs of broken bones. Asako realized how damaged he was both mentally and physically. She thought it might have been easier for him to just give up on life, but she promised to protect him. The next morning, Asako tried to force-feed Yuji. When he looked at JB for help, Asako told him not to bother, saying JB was naive and would believe anything. To help Yuji heal, Asako got him a puppy, telling him to take good care of it. Yuji named the pup John Doe, a term used for unidentified bodies in the military. Watching him play with the dog, JB noted that it was the first time Yuji seemed like a regular kid. As months passed, Asako made a shocking decision to quit her job at the intelligence agency. JB warned her of the consequences, asking if Yuji was the reason behind her change. Asako admitted she now feared dying because she had Yuji to care for, but she also revealed that she was losing her vision, making her ineffective as a sniper. One night, Asako found Yuji outside, staring at the stars and crying. As he grew, she began coaching him more intensely. She told him to run fast to be popular with girls in elementary school. By middle school, she said running wasn't enough. She advised him to be a bad boy, strong and capable. She trained him hard, teaching him to fight for the right reasons and to use whatever means necessary to win. This included using his dog John Doe, who he commanded to bite her during training. Finally, she told him that by high school, being strong wasn't enough. He also needed to be smart. Sako made him read a wide variety of books. She was preparing him for life, equipping him with physical strength and mental sharpness. She became more than just his protector. She was his mentor, shaping him into a person who could face the world's harsh realities. Deep down, Asako hoped this would give Yuji something he never had before, a chance for a normal life. Yuji finds Asako cleaning her gun one day. She asks if he's ever shot a gun, then takes him to shoot in the wilderness the next day. He misses his first shot from 300 meters, but is determined to hit it the next time. Asako promises him a gift if he does. He hits the target, and Asako gives him a sniper rifle in a case marked with her agent number, 9029. She tells him it's his rifle now, but urges him to stick to his path and never give up. Yuji asks if he can call her his master, because she's not a mom, sister, or dad to him. She's his master. During winter, Asako collects bullets and they go hunting. Yuji aims at a deer. Asako tells him not to waste bullets, as it costs taxpayers money. But Yuji hesitates and can't pull the trigger. Asako understands. He's been through a lot for a kid. One day, Yuji wakes to his dog, John Doe, barking. A bear has broken into their home. Yuji grabs his gun but returns to find the bear biting John. He aims to save his dog but freezes and can't shoot. The bear leaves, and Yuji decides he won't let his fears stop him anymore. He tries to save John, but slips on the snow, jamming his gun. The bear is about to attack when Yuji uses his knife. The bear knocks it away. Remembering Asako's teachings, Yuji uses a stick to blind the bear and aims his gun at its head. Just then, he sees bear cubs approaching John, seeing the dog as food. Yuji is torn, wondering why his family has to be their meal. In pain, he screams and fires his gun. But when he returns home, all he has is John's collar. Asako asks what happened. Yuji admits he couldn't kill the bear. Through these experiences, Yuji learns tough lessons about courage, hesitation, and the brutal cycle of life and death. Each moment tests him, pulling him between his traumatic past and the skills and lessons he's learning from Asako, his master. Whether it's missing a shot, failing to save his dog, or facing a moral dilemma in the wilderness, each experience hardens him but also reveals his vulnerabilities. And yet each lesson, whether from a book or a bitter life experience, shapes him under Asako's tough but caring guidance. She's not just teaching him to shoot or to be brave. She's teaching him to navigate a world that has so far been incredibly harsh to him. Yuji tells Asako he wishes he could have been stronger to save his dog, John. Asako comforts him, saying it's okay, and that it's not just about physical strength. They spend the evening burying John's collar. She teaches Yuji another lesson. In the past, he would have to kill 10 enemies to die honorably, but now he must save 10 lives. She emphasizes he should never hesitate to pull the trigger if it's to save another person. Years later, Asako talks to JBD, another person in their life. She mentions that Yuji has gone through a lot of plot development. Confused, JB asks what she means. Asako makes a metaphor about storytelling, saying that Yuji has moved through various life stages under her guidance. JB seems a little disturbed by the close relationship between Asako and Yuji, considering they've lived together for 2 years. Yuji recalls a moment with Asako when she asked about his birthday. When he said it was that day, she offered to give him the best present, herself. This moment signified a turning point in their relationship. JD inquires if it was a one-time thing, but Asako reveals they've continued to grow closer each day. Yuji comes back with ramen, interrupting their conversation. JD pretends like nothing happened, fearing Yuji might have overheard them. Asako teases JB, saying that's why she's never really experienced life's highs and lows. Asako suggests JB should give Yuji a try as she has trained him well in many aspects. After they've had some drinks, Asako sets up a special mission for Yuji with JB, who is now tipsy. Asako encourages Yuji to make sure JB has a good time. He takes her to the bedroom and calls her by her first name, a sign of intimacy. Rather than enjoying the dinner he had prepared, JB finds herself overwhelmed by the intensity Yuji brings into the moment. This marks another milestone in Yuji's life development under Asako's tutelage. A few more years pass, and Yuji continues to navigate the complexities of life. Each experience, whether good or bad, adds another layer to his character. The lessons from Asako about courage, responsibility, and even love remain with him as guideposts. Whether he's confronting bears in the wilderness or complex emotions in the bedroom, Yuji grows under the watchful eye of his master, Asako, who shapes him not just into a skilled individual, but also into a human being capable of love, compassion, and decisive action when it matters most. As time goes on, Yuji notices Asako's health is failing. Despite her denial, he sees her hands shake when she drinks and observes that she's missing work. When an urgent call for a mission comes, Asako is too weak to answer. Yuji takes the call and even starts doing her jobs for her. A few days later, Jibi confronts Asako for letting Yuji take on her responsibilities. Asako admits she's not the one completing the missions. Yuji steps in, saying it's his choice. He wants to give back to the person who's done so much for him. Jibi fears that Yuji is losing himself in Asako's risky lifestyle, but Yuji assures her that it gives his life purpose. Jibi is angry and takes Yuji outside, firing shots into the ceiling as a dramatic exit. Standing by the river, Yuji admits that he told Asako he wants to be like her. Jibi shares her belief that the world probably doesn't need two Asakos, but she's glad Yuji respects her so much. She asks him again if this is truly the path he wants, and Yuji confirms that it's the only way he knows to repay his debts to them both. Soon after, Asako informs Yuji that he's going to America for military school. Once there, a man asks him why he's there, and Yuji jokingly says it's because he ended his parents. After clearing the air, Yuji advises the man to buy his own shoes to avoid athlete's foot. The man is surprised, questioning how Yuji would know this. Yuji says he's been a soldier since childhood, but the man thinks he's joking. In their shared living space, the man refers to Yuji as an Asian boy. Yuji corrects him, stating he's Japanese, and introduces himself as Yuji. The man mocks him, but Yuji remains steadfast. All of this marks a new chapter for Yuji. From taking over Asako's duties due to her declining health, to confronting the concerns of Jibi, and finally, stepping into a different world in America. Yuji is evolving, yet he remains anchored by the desire to repay the deep debt he feels towards Asako, the master and caretaker who shaped him. It's a complex path, fraught with risk and challenge, but for Yuji, it's the only way forward. He'll continue to carry the lessons and influences of the people who've molded him as he steps into this new stage of life. Yuji gets called Eugene by a man who thinks he looks feminine. Yuji jokes back, saying the man's loud music could make him deaf. The man laughs and introduces himself as Danny. Danny calls Yuji Shorty, a nickname Yuji just accepts. The next day during training, the commander slaps Yuji, saying it's an honor since he was raised by Asako, a highly respected figure. Meanwhile, Danny struggles to keep up. Yuji advises him to quit smoking to improve his stamina. To motivate Danny, Yuji asks what he'd do if a woman was drowning. This works, and Danny swims like never before. At lunch, Danny mocks Yuji's tough demeanor. They both complain about their strict commander. Yuji finds her attractive, but Danny thinks that's crazy. A woman named Annie overhears and punishes Danny for his rudeness. During his shooting practice, Yuji nails every target. The commander is amazed, mentioning that only Asako used to do that. Later, a girl named Millie approaches Yuji. She turns out to be the second best sniper and wants to talk marksmanship. They go to the shooting range, where Yuji impresses her with his skills, helping her realize that her father's tales about shooting weren't lies. Training ends, and Yuji gets sent overseas. On the ship, Danny asks him what he bought with his earnings. Danny has bought a car, but Yuji shows him a lady's watch. Danny teases him about it, but Millie overhears and isn't pleased, giving Danny a kick for his crude remarks. As they talk, they notice a man playing a dating simulator game involving his virtual sister. Yuji identifies the man as likely being Japanese like him. Over time, Yuji follows orders and builds up his confidence. Eventually, they're sent to a real battlefield in a forest. Looking around, Yuji sees his squad, Danny, Millie, and even the man they saw playing the dating simulator game. Each has a unique background, and Yuji starts to feel the weight of his responsibilities. He thinks about Asako's teachings and how far he's come. Yuji also remembers the tough love from his commander, the friendship with Danny, the marksmanship talks with Millie, and even the quirky man lost in his dating game. All these experiences have shaped him in some way, preparing him for the challenges ahead. The reality of the battlefield looms large, but Yuji takes a moment to appreciate the journey that's brought him here. It's a blend of life lessons and odd friendships, a unique tapestry that makes him who he is today. Armed with this newfound appreciation for his past and a sense of purpose for the future, Yuji is ready. He takes a deep breath, lifts his sniper rifle, and prepares for whatever challenges lie ahead. With each person he's met adding a piece to his life's puzzle, Yuji feels more prepared than ever to face what's coming. Yuji scans his team, a misfit crew including Danny from Arizona, a young girl who's had a hard past, and an anime lover obsessed with his virtual sister, and a sniper who can't bring himself to kill. Yuji can't help but think they're the army's most mismatched squad. His thoughts are interrupted when Danny suggests shooting a bird for food. Yuji takes aim and succeeds, but then throws up, causing him to question how he managed in real combat. Later, in their tents, they meet their field commander and start setting traps. But one night, the atmosphere changes. Enemies are approaching. They get into position. The fight begins. Yuji shoots but vomits afterwards, struggling with the reality of what he's doing. As his friends hold the front lines, Yuji's commander gives him a stern pep talk. He's told that the people he's fighting with are his only family, that it's okay to hesitate in killing, but not at the cost of watching his loved ones die. Emboldened, Yuji acts. His shots find their marks, and one by one, the enemies fall. Though he's sickened by the act, his commander keeps count, assuring him he did the right thing. Eventually, Yuji loses consciousness. When he wakes up, Millie comforts him. She assures him that everyone is safe because of him and promises to always have his back. With more time in the battlefield, Yuji becomes more steadfast, immune to the constant chaos. However, Danny starts to question the meaning of the war and what winning even is. Their tour ends, and they all make it out alive. Back home, Danny tries to make a move on Millie after learning she and Yuji have ended their relationship. Millie, unimpressed, looks out the window and prays for Yuji's happiness. As Yuji boards the plane home, he reflects on the trials he's been through, the bonds he's made, and the people he's fought with and for. When he arrives back in his hometown, his welcoming committee is just one person, Asako. His experiences have taught him valuable life lessons, the harsh guidance from his commanders, Danny's offbeat friendship, Millie's emotional support, and even the weird Anon lover have collectively prepared him for the realities of life and war. Returning home, he feels a sense of completion, but also realizes this is just a stop on his ongoing journey. Now more resilient and resolute, he's ready for whatever comes next, carrying the weight of the lives Sadie had taken. Each person in his life, each experience, has been a brushstroke in the portrait of who he is. With a newfound respect for life and the fragility of human connections, Yuji steps back into his world, ready to face whatever new challenges life has to offer. When Yuji comes home, Asako notices he looks older and more grown-up. He tells her seeing her face makes him feel truly happy for the first time. He confesses he's uncertain about his future, but wants to give his life to her. Yuji thinks back to the last time he saw Danny, his friend, at Vancouver Airport. Danny was smiling, and Yuji wondered when his friend's joke would end. Some months later, Yuji's on a mission in Spain. It's a call to rush home. Asako has collapsed. Jiri tells him that her health is bad due to old injuries. When Yuji arrives, Jiri says Asako keeps drifting in and out of sleep. Yuji finds Asako, and she holds his hand. He asks if she's dying, and she says she is. Yuji starts crying, saying he still needs to learn from her. Asako tells him to be strong and says that she now understands the purpose of her life was to love and protect him. Yuji cries, telling her she's been his only support in a tough life. He says she was the only reason he kept going. Asako advises him to live for himself from now on. That's the kind of man she wants him to be. Yuji says he can't do it without her. She's been his warmth and safety. But Asako encourages him to be brave and discover his own path, to be the man she knows he can be. She says she's accepted her fate, but Yuji doesn't want to. He says even if it's God's decision, he wants to fight it. Asako tells him to stop being silly. They spend their last moments together looking at the stars. Asako recalls Yuji once crying under the stars when he first came to live with her. She asks what he was thinking then, but he can't remember. She laughs, saying she knew he would say that. Their time together is bittersweet, filled with both love and pain. Asako has prepared Yuji to be the man she always hoped he would be. Yuji, though heartbroken, understands he has a new responsibility, to live not just for Asako, but for himself. Asako tells Yuji she's tired and wants to sleep. He agrees, and she never wakes up again. Jiri's team takes her body away. Yuji tries to hold it together. When they cremate Asako, a bullet is found among her ashes, which Yuji thinks suits her well. Weeks go by, and Yuji questions if he'll join Asako someday. He vows not to, at least until he fulfills his promise to save 5 people. This is his only goal now, but he hopes to see her again. Devastated, Yuji sleeps on the floor for days until JB wakes him up with a slap. She brings him to live with her, hoping they can heal each other. During dinner, JB offers to get him anything. Yuji asks for a better toothbrush, revealing he's been using hers. Realizing they've both been using each other's toothbrushes, JB buys 2 new ones. Yuji apologizes, but JB says she should have expected him to be as unrefined as Asako. Their cohabitation becomes strained. JB often cries, asking if Yuji thinks of Asako when he's with her. As days pass, she starts coming home less. Yuji ponders leaving on a journey, recalling Asako's advice about finding his path. She promised they would travel together on her motorcycle, a promise unkept. One day, he tells Jibi he'll go wherever the wind takes him but promises to return. She lets him go more easily than he expected. Yuji rides Asako's bike and meets people from different backgrounds. He faces rain and even texts Julius to say he loves her. Eventually, his bike breaks down. A stranger offers him a ride, but Yuji declines, saying he's a lost youth. The man laughs, making Yuji question if his problem is simply being young. This ordeal forces Yuji to confront his feelings. Asako's absence leaves a hole in his life, but he knows he needs to move forward to honor her memory and his promise. His awkward living situation with Jibi makes him realize that they can't fill each other's emotional gaps. They each have their own healing to do. Jibi's question about whether he thinks of Asako stings, but it also forces him to understand that he can't cling to the past forever. The promise to save 5 people gives him a renewed sense of purpose. His journey isn't just physical, it's also a journey within himself to find his true path. Even if that path involves making mistakes or confronting uncomfortable truths, it's part of the growth Asako always wanted for him. By leaving Jibi and embarking on this journey, he's taking his first real steps into the unknown, driven by the winds of change and the guidance of a lost loved one. But the journey is also about accepting that he can't keep living for someone else. Yuji emails Jibi saying he's going home. He visits Asako's grave and apologizes for not understanding more about himself and for breaking her bike. Then, he imagines hearing Asako asking him if he enjoyed his journey. He did, but feels lost about what to do next. His travels taught him what was missing in his life: a chance at being a regular young person. Yuji decides to attend a normal high school. A few months later, Yuji finds himself in a police station being questioned about his identity. The detective is furious because Yuji has no records of family or friends. Yuji insists he's just a student. Later, he's released after the Ministry of Defense intervenes. On his first day of school, the principal picks him up. She's alarmed to find out he has a gun in his backpack, and she nearly crashes the car. Yuji saves the day, taking control of the wheel. When they arrive at the school, the principal introduces herself as Takabana. Yuji notices the campus is empty, even though it's a weekday. Takabana explains there are only 5 other students. When Yuji asks if it's a normal school, she confirms it is but says this was the only place that would accept him due to his unique situation. In the dorm, a girl in a maid uniform introduces herself as Kalmain. Yuji is puzzled. Why is a student dressed as a maid? His room looks okay, but something feels off. That night, Yuji wonders if he'll ever lead a normal life. The next morning, he decides to impress people with his athletic prowess. He drinks some grape juice and takes an eye drop before embarking on a 26-mile run. He thinks back to his time with Asako, who taught him different life lessons at different ages. In middle school, it was about being tough. Later, it was about being smart. She had been his only source of hope, but her strong personality also made him wary of forceful women. As he's about to leave his room, a red-haired girl suddenly falls in front of him. Yuji's journey of self-discovery is filled with ups and downs. Although he seeks a normal life, he knows deep down that his past and the mysteries around him make him anything but ordinary. His brief interaction with law enforcement and the odd circumstances of his new school further highlight how out of place he feels. Despite these hurdles, Yuji remains committed to his journey. It's as if he's searching for a place where he truly belongs, grappling with the emotional complexities left behind by Asako, and trying to fulfill her last wish for him, to find his own path. As he begins his life at this peculiar new school, Yuji can't help but ponder what normal really means. But it's clear that his unique life experiences have equipped him with the skills to handle even the most unexpected challenges, like averting car crashes and running long distances. In a way, he embodies a combination of the lessons he's learned, both from his travels and from Asako, as he takes each new step into the unknown. Yuji finds himself in a peculiar situation as he enters his new school. He first meets a red-haired girl named Suamon and another girl named Maki. Amon is surprised to hear his name, but introduces herself anyway. As he tours the school, he also meets Mishiru, a girl with a tough exterior, and Saki, who almost cuts his neck with a box cutter when he tries to introduce himself. Despite the odd encounter, Yuji tells Saki he's happy to be friends with her. That night, he realizes everyone is home, but since there's no homework, they must be playing video games. When he enters his room, he discovers someone broke in thanks to a tape trap he set up. Surprisingly, it's Amon and dressed in a way that makes him wonder why she's in his room dressed like that, especially when it's not his birthday. Amon laughs at his blunt reaction. She's surprised at how calm he is, and he replies that it's her who's making quite the display. Amani changes the subject and asks if Yuji is used to being around women. When he mentions he had an older sister who passed away, she apologizes for bringing it up. She's shocked when he tells her his sister's name was Kazuki. Amani decides to change her outfit and asks for Yuji's opinion. He bluntly tells her she looks worse than his dead dog, causing her to think he's emotionally cold. When Amani notices some containers on his table and learns they're his dinner, she decides she'll cook for him and be his new big sister. This series of events highlights Yuji's new life at this so-called normal school, which is turning out to be anything but ordinary. It's like he stepped into a strange drama where each character has their own quirks and mysteries, Amani being the most puzzling so far. The encounter with her in his room adds another layer of complexity. She's intrigued by his calm demeanor, especially given the strange circumstances. Yuji's mention of his deceased sister Kazuki seems to stir something in Amani, making him wonder how she might be connected to his past. Amani, sensing Yuji's emotional barriers, tries to break the ice by offering to cook for him. It's an awkward but heartfelt gesture, reflecting her own emotional complexities. Yuji feels out of place but also intrigued by these characters that now surround him. Each interaction seems like a piece of a bigger puzzle he's yet to solve. The unusual introductions, from Saki's dangerous greeting to Mishiru's tough act, all add to his suspicion that this school is far from the normal experience he was seeking. Despite the oddities, these encounters provide him with something he didn't expect but probably needs. Yuji's life at his new, ordinary school took another strange turn. After a puzzling visit from Amani, who somehow got into his locked room, he started doubting the normalcy of the school. He recalled a haunting memory of a school bus falling off a cliff, and Amani mysteriously mentioning, "I found you." He felt sure that this was far from an average school and that every girl here was hiding something. Just then, his phone rang. It was Jibi's contact from work, informing him of a new mission. As he packed his bag, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. This was not the regular school life he had hoped for. The next day, Jibi visited him. She asked if he was enjoying his new school, but Yuji sarcastically commented on her appearance. Jibi warned him to watch his tongue, but drove off, visibly annoyed. Back in class, Amani questioned him about JB. He brushed it off, saying she was just his boss, and that his job involved cleaning up garbage. Amani seemed satisfied with his answer as long as he didn't have a girlfriend. Mishiru, another classmate, was eavesdropping but denied having any interest in him. After his usual run, Yuji noticed Amani trying to sneak into his room again. He hid and listened. She seemed upset about not giving him a wake-up kiss. But then she started sniffing his clothes and lay on his bed, acting strangely. Yuji decided to confront her. Startled, she yelled at him to get out. Later, Amani sprained her ankle during gym class. This prompted Yuji to ponder the strange happenings even more. How did Amani pick his locked door? Why did she sniff his clothes? And what was her connection to his unsettling past? Chibi's unexpected visit made him reevaluate his life choices. He couldn't balance his secretive work life with his complicated school life, especially with Chibi dropping by uninvited. He felt annoyed by her comments, leading him to retort about her appearance. The tension between them was palpable, yet he couldn't avoid her since she was part of his other life. The girls at his school were a mystery too. Amani's actions hinted at something deeper. Mishiru's standoffish behavior and her eavesdropping added another layer of complexity. Each interaction seemed to pose more questions than answers, making Yuji feel like he was living in a web of mysteries. He questioned the so-called normalcy of his life, the school, and wondered if a simple, ordinary life was too much to ask for. His thoughts about Amani were jumbled. She was increasingly becoming a puzzle he wanted to solve, but her actions were disconcerting. Her attempts to break into his room, combined with her strange behavior, made him uneasy. Yet he was also curious. What were her true intentions? To sum it up, Yuji's new school life was turning out to be a maze of questions and complexities. From his mysterious classmates to his unanticipated missions and awkward interactions with Chibi, each day seemed to be a far cry from the ordinary he had envisioned. But even within this chaos, he couldn't help but feel intrigued, waiting for the next odd twist in his not-so-normal life. Yuji's life was far from ordinary, especially with all the strange incidents involving the girls at his school. One day, Amani, one of the mysterious girls, sprained her ankle. Yuji helped her to the nurse's office. As he tried to leave, Amani grabbed onto him, pleading for him not to go. Exhausted by her antics, Yuji told her to get to the point. Amani then confessed her feelings, saying she fell for him at first sight and wanted to make his life better. Yuji, annoyed, told her to stop pestering him. Hurt but undeterred, Amani asked to be his big sister, to which Yuji sarcastically replied that they're not in Alabama. Eventually, Yuji agreed to play along with the sibling idea, perplexed by her strange behavior. In class, Amani presented him with a gift, making him wonder why she was meddling so much in his life. Amani admitted that she was doing it mostly to feel good about herself. Yuji found her actions suffocating, yet oddly comforting, as he had been isolating himself after the death of his mentor, realizing that he was missing a normal life. A few weeks later, Yuji took a bike trip back home with another friend, Maki, to celebrate his late mentor, Asako's birthday. Once home, he discovered a portrait left by JB, his work contact, capturing all three of them. He decided to keep it a secret. At sunset, he visited Asako's grave, introducing her to his new friend Maki, thanking her for raising him. Later that night, he called JB, addressing her as Julia, to inform her of his whereabouts. Staring at the night sky, Yuji found himself lost in thoughts about the beauty of stars, something he hadn't thought of in a long while. Upon returning, JB drove him home, giving him a surprise kiss on the cheek before leaving. He felt that this complicated his already complex life. Entering his room, he found that Amani had tidied up and ironed all his clothes. She offered him dinner or a shower, making Yuji question her eagerness to involve herself in his life. She simply confessed it was love at first sight. Though skeptical, he sat down to eat the dinner she had prepared. Right then, Amani received an email from another girl, asking what's going on between him and the lonely blonde. Yuji acknowledged that she was right on the mark, implying his complicated relationship with JB. Yuji was puzzled by Bomani's actions. She hugged him and asked for a kiss to stop making her jealous. Yuji complied, but afterward, Bomani questioned if it was really his first kiss. He assured her it was and added that if she chose to love him, he would accept her feelings. However, he warned that he might not always be around and asked her to move on if anything ever happened to him. Bomani accepted his terms and asked if that made her his girlfriend, to which he said yes. Overwhelmed with emotion, she sank to her knees, shaking. Yuji helped her up but questioned why she loved him so much. As they were talking, Bomani started to cry. She finally revealed something shocking. She had survived a terrible bus accident 6 years ago. The bus had been carrying a girls' basketball team and had fallen off a cliff. All the girls disappeared except her. Yuji was stunned. He knew the school's name. Bomani admitted she'd known he was the brother of Kazuki, one of the girls on that bus, from the moment she heard his name. She had kept it a secret until now and told Yuji she had something to show him. She returned with an old journal. Yuji opened it to read the entry about the fateful day. The girls' bus had suffered a flat tire and went off the cliff. By the time Bomani woke up, the bus was in ruins. It was Kazuki who helped her get out. Faced with the daunting task of whom to help first, Kazuki chose to save the girl she liked the least. Yuji was in disbelief. The revelation opened old wounds and created new questions. Why had Bomani kept this hidden? And what did it mean for their newfound relationship? The journal and its grim tale were like ghosts from the past, haunting both of them now. Yuji felt a mix of emotions: surprise, betrayal, and a strange form of relief. He'd finally learned something about the incident that had swallowed his sister and so many others into oblivion. He looked at Bomani, who was already emotionally fragile, and thought about his own complicated life. He realized that while they were both vulnerable, this was not the time for them to develop the plot, as she had humorously suggested. When he saw her shaking hand, he tapped her head to snap her out of it. "Don't get carried away," he cautioned. Despite ever having been in a relationship before, he was wary. He knew the weight of secrets, the pain of loss, and the complexity of human emotions. Kazuki had a plan. After saving all the girls from the wrecked bus, she tried to get a phone signal, but had no luck. Not only that, but their compass was also broken, and they were trapped by cliffs and a risky jumble path. Back at their makeshift camp, Ritsu realized their teacher was mildly concussed, Hiroka had a broken knee, and Sakurai and Kaneda had other injuries. Kazuki took charge, asking for boiled water to sterilize the wounds. She decided to treat Kaneda first since her injury was the least serious. If others don't make it, at least time won't be wasted, Kazuki reasoned. Amine was confused. Did Kazuki have friends to worry about? "You're my only friend now," Kazuki replied. Kazuki later noticed her own arm was injured because she used a seatbelt to brace for the crash. The teacher finally woke up and they discussed their situation. A piece of metal had caused their tire to burst, stranding them in the wilderness. Although the president suggested waiting for rescue, Kazuki disagreed. "We don't have enough food or water," she argued. Insisting they should attempt to escape, the president criticized her, and Kazuki apologized. Amine questioned why she did so. "I apologized so he'll later realize I was right," Kazuki said. Amine thought this was a dangerous time to be prideful. As night fell, Amine wondered what Kazuki was doing. "Reading a book," she said, revealing her photographic memory allows her to read any time in her mind. The next morning, Amane saw a girl tossing her phone in the air, trying for a signal. "We're really in trouble," Amane thought. When she found Kazuki later, she was collecting edible grass. Amane warned her not to wander off, surprising Kazuki. "I never thought someone would worry about me," she said. Back at camp, one girl advised Amane to stick with Kazuki, hinting at specific words to say if they argued. Later, as they treated two injured girls, Kazuki mentioned that if Amane wanted to switch partners, she wouldn't be offended. But Amane remembered the words whispered to her earlier. This ordeal was a test for everyone, but especially for Kazuki and Amane. Faced with limited resources, dire circumstances, and emotional turmoil, they were learning more about each other and themselves. It's a test of character, skill, and above all, friendship. Amane couldn't help but worry about Kazuki, who seemed so competent, yet so lonely. And for Kazuki, it was an unexpected experience of having someone care for her well-being. Though trapped in a desperate situation, they were both making discoveries that could perhaps make them stronger, regardless of what lay ahead. Things were getting emotionally intense between Kazuki and Amane. Amane admitted she liked Kazuki the most among all the girls, which made Kazuki blush. Just as they were having this moment, they heard a helicopter. Everyone screamed for help, but it flew past them. Amane quickly ran to the bus and honked the horn, hoping the sound would bring it back. Sadly, the helicopter never returned. As days passed, the situation worsened. By the third day, some girls had died, and their bodies were starting to rot. The teacher buried them, leaving everyone wondering if help would ever come or if they would share the same fate. Kazuki shared that she has a little brother whom she loves, but others treated him as if he's worthless. Amane broke down, saying she just wanted to go home. Kazuki comforted her, promising to do everything to get her home. By day 4, food was scarce. On day 5, rain kept them idle. By day 6, they were down to just 10 carrots. When Rizz noticed a carrot missing, Kazuki cleverly avoided causing panic by chopping the remaining carrots and rearranging them into 11 pieces, saying it was a puzzle. Amane found Kazuki's smart moves both impressive and a bit scary. On day 7, the injured girls had lost their appetites. Kazuki noticed that Hiroka hadn't been eating because she was embarrassed about soiling herself. She spent time comforting Hiroka, leaving Amane wondering why she didn't receive the same kindness. But Amane soon discovered an injury on Kazuki's neck and realized she was suffering too. Kazuki reassured her, saying she'd always come back to Amane when times were tough. On day 8, Kazuki swore to sacrifice everything to protect Amane and confess her love for her. By the 10th day, the rains wouldn't stop and morale was low. Kazuki advised Amane to stop voicing her worries out loud. In a desperate attempt to lift spirits, Kazuki suggested eating snails, but Amane was sick of them. They discovered one girl had worms in her wound, and while treating her, the girl wished to get Ice-Cat away from this awful situation. Day 11 came, and mental states were breaking. One girl was losing her mind, and another was sad about her dog being sick at home. Yet the only glimmer of hope was that their teacher might return with help. By this point, hope was running thin for everyone. They had turned to eating bugs and drinking unsafe water, which left them sick but momentarily distracted from their miserable situation. On the 12th day, Komori's dog died. As hard as it was, Kazuki suggested they eat the dog to survive. There were tears, but they agreed. Kazuki did the grim task of preparing the dog. Eating it extended their lives a bit, and the taste was something they'd never forget. The unlucky 13th day came. Komori got sick from eating a poisonous plant and never woke up. The injured girls were out of their minds, and everyone was losing hope. On the 14th day, the teacher returned, empty-handed, making it clear that he failed to find help. Kazuki spent that day thinking about her brother and promised Amane they would meet him once they were rescued. The 15th day arrived, bringing more loss. Despite the grief, all Amane could think was that fewer people meant less food needed. The teacher and the president returned, saying they had caught a deer. Amane told Kazuki about the food, but Kazuki feared it might be disease and refused to eat. Amane also chose not to eat after Kazuki declined. That night, Kazuki woke Amane to reveal a shocking plan. They would escape. She warned Amane they had to leave everyone else behind because they had become like ghouls, lost to their hunger and desperation. They snuck into the forest, where Amane was horrified to discover a student's uniform, realizing the deer they were eating was actually one of them. The teacher almost caught them, but Kazuki fought him off, knocking him out with her backpack. Amane couldn't believe what was happening. Was this even real? Kazuki told her it was best to think of their former friends as non-human at this point. Just then, Sakuma appeared, but Kazuki declared her a lost cause because she had already chosen the other side. They ran away, acknowledging the horrifying reality they were now part of. As they continued to run, each step was a decision to survive, no matter the moral cost. Their world had been reduced to a grim struggle for life, where even the most basic human decency was now a luxury they couldn't afford. Despite the nightmare they were living in, the glimmer of hope and human connection between Kazuki and Omine offered a stark contrast to the darkness surrounding them. In this difficult time, Amine broke down in tears. Kazuki tried to calm her, reminding her of her promise to save her. Suddenly, they realized that the other girls had turned against them. As they tried to escape, Amine tricked, telling Kazuki to go on without her. Amine received a backpack and a map from Kazuki to navigate out of the forest. Kazuki assured her they'd meet again and urged her to run without looking back. Amine knew that Kazuki was sacrificing herself so she could live. As days passed, Amine fought for her life, vowing not to eat the sweets in the backpack, hoping Kazuki would catch up with her. Eventually, Amine found her way out of the forest. Spotted by a passing car, she reached a cabbage field and ate ravenously, crying with relief. When Amine returned to school, she faced bullying and accusations. The guilt of being the lone survivor haunted her. Then a man named Yuji appeared. Amine had been hiding the fact that she felt responsible for the loss of Yuji's sister. She thought becoming his sister might make amends. Yuji suspected she was just acting out of guilt, which Amine confirmed. But as time passed, Amine began to genuinely fall in love with Yuji. This complicated things, she felt she couldn't atone for her past if she was happy with him. So she revealed her dark history, asking him to kill her as the only way to find peace. Yuji responded by tapping her on the head, saying she was too weak to even think of such an act. He also told her to stop acting like his sister because he only had one and she could never replace her. The years of guilt, survival, and complex emotions had taken their toll on Amine. She was caught in a cycle of self-blame and punishment, unable to see a way out. But Yuji's simple gesture and straightforward words acted like a mirror, forcing her to look at herself from a new perspective. Though the guilt and the trauma were far from gone, Amine began to see that there might be another way to live. Not as a punishment for the past, but as a complex, flawed human being who still had the capacity to love and be loved, to hurt and to heal. It was a harsh lesson, one that came with its own kind of pain, but it was also perhaps the first step towards something like forgiveness, if not for the world around her, then at least for herself. Yuji took a moment to think before addressing Amine's intense emotions. He understood she had fallen in love with him and was grappling with deep regrets. Yuji told her that everyone carries regrets, and it's hard to simply forget them. He accepted her willingness to dedicate her life to him and told her that her punishment would be to live for his sake. He would become her king and god, and she should stay with him forever. Amine broke down crying, and Yuji told her she could cry, but only for 3 minutes. Yuji believed that by accepting Amine despite her past, he was giving her a chance to eventually forgive herself. When she calmed down, he brought up the topic of Kazuki, her lost friend, whose body was never found. Amine revealed a note from Kazuki, setting a rendezvous point in case they got separated. It was clear that Kazuki had planned for Amine to escape alone. The next morning, they decided to visit that designated spot. As Amine bought flowers for graves, a stranger approached Yuji claiming to be a big fan of Amine. Yuji found the man creepy, but didn't dwell on it. They drove to the meeting spot marked on the map. Upon arrival, Yuji uncovered a thermos hidden under a stone. Inside was a letter from Kazuki. The letter confirmed everyone else had died from illnesses after eating contaminated meat, ironically making Amine the only survivor because she didn't partake. Kazuki believed it was fate's way of rewarding Amine for her respect for human life. Yuji's approach had been tough but transformative for Amine. By compelling her to live for him, he offered her a path to eventual self-forgiveness. It was a complex form of redemption, one that acknowledged the heavy burden of the past while still leaving room for future happiness. His perspective was like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning in guilt and sorrow. The appearance of the strange man earlier, who claimed to be Amine's fan, added another layer of complexity to an already intricate emotional tapestry. While it was unsettling, it also illustrated the public's fascination with survivors, however misunderstood their experiences may be. Finally, the letter from Kazuki brought both closure and fresh grief. It confirmed the tragic fate of their friends, but also validated Amine's choices. And it indicated that Kazuki, in her own way, had tried to give Amine a roadmap for surviving the ordeal, both physically and emotionally. That note became a tangible link to the past, a haunting reminder of the sacrifices made, and perhaps a sign that despite everything, Amine was meant to keep living, if only to honor those who couldn't. The letter from Kazuki, Yuji's sister, revealed her last wish. She wanted Amine to look out for her brother, describing him as a useless coward, but still family. This made Amin wonder if Kazuki might still be alive. Yuji couldn't confirm it, but knew the letter was definitely from his sister. Now at the memorial site, Amin decided to stop saying sorry and start saying thank you to all those she lost. Then things took a strange turn. Amin and Yuji received a mysterious phone call. The voice on the other end claimed to be a father coming to punish her. Alarmed, Yuji contacted his agency for backup, leaving Amin curious about his secretive job. Back at school, a dangerous situation unfolded. A shooter was on the premises, and police were trying to handle it. Yuji and Amin arrived, and Amin was surprised to see who Yuji was working with. Clearly, he was involved in some serious matters. The school's structure made it hard for snipers. However, Yuji identified a far-off lighthouse as a potential sniping point. The odds were not in their favor. The shooter had to be in a very specific spot for the plan to work. Yuji coordinated with one of the girls inside, Maki, using Morse code to signal her. The message: break the second urinal to lure the shooter into position. Maki went to the bathroom with another girl in the shuru, but ended up accidentally breaking the toilet instead. Yuji, in his sniper position at the lighthouse, got word of what happened. He was ready to take the shot when Amin came into the room. Before she did it, Yuji instructed her to make the man drink as much water as possible. As Amin entered the room, the tense atmosphere was palpable. Yuji was miles away in a lighthouse, his finger on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment. The shooter was inside, unaware of the trap being laid for him. And Amin, aware of the plan, was also aware of the enormous risks. Yuji's role as a sniper and the mysterious jobs he took on were all a puzzle to Amin. Now staring danger in the face, she realized just how complex her life had become. The moment brought into focus Kazuki's last wish for her to look out for her brother. Amin understood that if they survived this ordeal, her mission was to help Yuji as much as he had helped her. In the thick of danger, moral ambiguity, and high stakes, the past and present came rushing together. With everyone's life hanging by a thread, Amin knew it was time to act. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fulfilling promises, both spoken and unspoken. And so, the weight of Kazuki's last request on her shoulders, Amin steeled herself for what was to come. Amin tried to give the threatening man water to drink, hoping to execute Yuji's plan. The man, filled with anger over the loss of his daughter, told her that either she or her friends had to die for her to be forgiven. Before she could respond, he hit her and started mistreating her. Yuji heard her screams just as his phone battery died. Uncertain of what was happening, he decided to stick to his original plan and wait. The man continued his cruel game, forcing Amin into a bathroom stall. Just as he was distracted, Yuji took a shot, grazing the man's shoulder. Seizing the opportunity, Amin grabbed the gun and escaped. Police stormed in, saving all the girls and arresting the man. Yuji packed up his sniper rifle and was praised for his work, but he reminded everyone that protecting his school was his duty. The girls showed their gratitude by hugging him. Meanwhile, Yuji stopped narrating his life to JB, his contact at the agency. An urgent instruction came from military commanders. He was given a mission that he couldn't refuse without committing treason. He got into position, targeting his objective, while memories of his past played in his mind, reminding him of the choices that made him the man he is today. But then, he realized he was facing a worst-case scenario, putting an end to the recounting of his life story for now. Throughout this experience, Yuji demonstrated his composure and tactical skill, even when under extreme emotional and physical pressure. He managed to save Amin and her friends without jeopardizing the mission or revealing too much about his secret life. As for Amin, she faced a moral and physical trial that could have cost her and her friends their lives. She too showed courage and quick thinking in a critical situation, grabbing the gun and escaping at the right moment. Yuji's looming mission added another layer of complexity to his already intricate life. Not only does he have responsibilities as a student and friend, but he's also bound by obligations that could put him in direct conflict with those he cares about. For both Yuji and Amin, this episode was a tough but vital reminder of the challenges they still have to face individually and together.